Family disputes can make us feel isolated and vulnerable. Maybe you're going through a divorce or a legal dispute about your kids. Perhaps you've spent hours on Google or have even posted anonymously on Facebook to see what others have to say. But are you getting the actual information and support that you're looking for? Our podcast, Legal Lounge, aims to dispel misinformation and downright bad legal information to empower anyone with questions about their family, their children, their finances, their marriage, and the law. As a team focused exclusively on family law matters, we aim to help listeners not only with the information they need, but also with the hope that their situation has a solution. Short disclaimer, please note this podcast is for educational purposes only, and the information should not be relied upon as legal advice or for legal purposes. All right, welcome to the Legal Lounge.
We are excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, thank you. I am really excited to have you guys on because there's a lot of questions that come up with real estate. So before we jump into the questions, introduce yourselves and tell us more about what you do.
I'm Karyn Porter with the Porter Hawkins Group.
And I'm Lori Hawkins.
And we are certified divorce real estate experts. And so we have been trained to be a neutral third party in the sale of real property in divorce cases.
Right. And that's all we do. The Porter Hawkins Group only does divorce real estate. We don't do any kind of residential or anything like that. Everything we do is based around divorce cases.
And so the certification, CDRE for short, there is a whole process to become certified and to be able to claim that designation. Yeah. Explain a little bit more about what that process is.
Well, there is only a 10% acceptance rate into the program.
Okay.
And there is a lot that you have to do to be accepted. We had to submit resumes. We had to submit our sales records, get 2 letters of recommendations, go through 2 or 3 interview processes to get accepted. And then once we actually got into the program, it was a 40-hour class, live class through Zoom. And this was held through the Alumni Institute out in California. And so we had to go through the class, and then we had to do a final exam. And if you passed that, which everyone didn't, so if you passed that, then we started a 6-month apprenticeship, mentorship with a family law attorney. And we had to do that for 6 months. And we continuously to this day are doing a CE class, a 1-hour CE class every Thursday afternoon. We are continuing to learn and make our craft more on point of what's going on. It keeps us up to date on what's going on in the family law community.
I think a lot of people are surprised to find that we actually had a vocabulary test. So when we sit down and we read orders or get a phone call from an attorney, we understand what they're talking about.
Yeah. We had to learn your jargon.
Our verbiage,
That's exactly.
Yeah, the interesting thing is once you graduate from the class, you have to apply to get into the Master Club, which is what Lori was talking about, the weekly CE that we have to do to stay in that school.
Yeah.
And credentials.
To keep the credentials,
to keep our credentials.
To keep the credentials, basically.
Yeah.
So after you applied for college, this program, and you completed the program, then you were able to work on specific like divorce cases or property sales cases. And what would you say are some of the challenging points that came up that really basically differentiated selling a house in a divorce from just selling a house?
That is such an excellent question because we get it all the time. Like, why should we use you guys? I have an Aunt Mary that I want to use, or I have a mother that I want to use. And Karyn and I say all the time that you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? And we both had done divorce cases before we became a CDRE. So, is it possible to do? Of course. That's what most people do is sell with a traditional realtor. But we have systems and procedures in place that we just didn't know we should have, you know. We ask for things, we do things up front that a traditional realtor doesn't, because they just don't understand. And it's no fault of their own, because you're not taught that in real estate school. But Laurel Starks, who is the founder of the Alumni Institute, she has been doing divorce cases for probably 17
Almost
years.
20 years.
Almost 20 years, yeah. And so we are just thriving off the mistakes that she has learned from and the knowledge that she has. And this is how you do it. And her goal is really for us to take care of the family law community and to protect and best get through the clients, your clients, through the selling process with as less stress and most knowledge from us to be able to guide them through it.
We've been trained to do medium to high conflict. I mean, that's kind of our specialty. We do all of it, even the
Please
the
don't pass this up on an easy case. Jessica's in back.
On an amicable case,
We will take them. We need a breather every now and then.
We have the training to do that. And what we have found, one of the hurdles is that we have other agents tell people, well, that's not a real thing. It's not. They've said that. And I think one of the differences is that when you are selling a home, you've got maybe a couple that is happy and they're selling the home, and it's stressful anyway. Selling the home is always stressful, whether you're happily married or not.
Exactly.
And they always... There's a lot of
attitude.
There's an attitude, and they don't trust. I mean, you see it all the time. They come in, they don't trust anyone. They don't trust their dog.
Right.
They don't even like their dog.
Everybody's out to get them.
Is out to get them. But
point.
we are trained to basically be that middle person, because we're not only negotiating with a buyer's agent who is negotiating on behalf of the buyer, and we're representing the seller. We then have to turn around and negotiate with sellers who aren't even speaking to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So knowing how to document, communicate, and navigate that is something that we're trained to do, and we do every day, all the time.
Well, I'm going to add a layer to that, because then you also have to deal with the attorneys.
Exactly.
True.
And we're not always fun to deal with.
That is the worst part. I'm kidding. But you're right. It is another layer that we have to do. And we have had several realtors call that have divorce cases that they're working on. Sometimes they want us to take them over. But a lot of times they call really just for advice. And, you know, they'll say, I don't know how to deal with this. And I'm like, well, have you made contact with the attorney? Am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to? They have no idea who the attorney is. It just really helped us to understand what we didn't know, because we would have never realized to do that either.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. We have learned a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah. Building relationships is a natural part of life. But how does the law affect those relationships? Do you want to marry your significant other but have cold feet from the many divorce horror stories out there? Are you preparing for a custody battle against your ex? That is where Modern Legal comes in. We offer education and knowledge about the law when it affects the relationships near and dear to your heart. To learn more about how family law affects your family, book a consultation with an attorney of our Modern Legal team by visiting our website, emailing us, or calling us at 704-286-6302. Check out the information about Modern Legal services at modernlegalnc.com. I try to be as approachable as possible, albeit I know we've had cases together, and you're like, ooh, that was a strong email from Theresa. Okay.
It's all right. It's okay.
It's part of
we
it.
have developed thick skin. I mean, you know, we really have, because, and gosh, even as much as we hear, we know you family law attorneys really hear more and have to put up with a lot more. But sometimes they come at us because we say constantly that we meet the nicest people at the worst times in their lives. And we really don't know the real person. We're just seeing all the emotion at top level.
Yeah.
And And so
a lot
we
of
just,
the anger and
Yeah.
frustration and things that maybe they're projecting at us isn't really
at us.
at us.
Right.
Yeah.
That always comes from somewhere else,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
so that's,
And, you know, going through a divorce myself, and Karyn hasn't, a lot of times things will happen and Karyn's like, I can't believe this. And I'm like, it's not us.
yeah.
She's, you know, and, you know, one
Mhm.
really, this is kind of the ultimate right here. When one spouse wants to use another realtor,
Mhm.
and one spouse doesn't really care, but they don't want to use that other realtor because
Mhm.
that spouse suggested it, right?
Yeah.
They just don't want to do anything. And so an attorney may suggest us,
Yeah.
but that one spouse still doesn't want to use us. And so, you know, they come back at us
Mhm.
and they're really ugly at us
Mhm.
because they just don't want to use us. Because it's a control issue.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They don't want to be
Mhm.
controlled.
Yep.
They don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're kind of like, whoa. But then I told Karyn, I was like, you know, they're not mad at us.
Yeah.
They just,
No.
you know, they don't want to be told what to do right now.
Yeah.
And they are being told
And
what
they're
to
mad
do.
at the situation.
They are.
It's an
Exactly.
emotional process.
Yeah, exactly.
My motto for myself, you know, everybody has a word of the year. I don't have a word. I have a phrase. I didn't create this mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because everyone asks me, how do you not get attached? Because as realtors, like we've been trained, like we know their birthday, the kid's birthday, we know the dog's birthday, we know the
Mhm.
dog's name, like to nurture,
It's
nurture,
a
nurture.
Yeah.
And being a CDRE, we are trained to be a neutral.
Yeah.
And so it is a different. So that's why I'm like, I didn't create this mess, but I will fix this and get you out of it
Yeah.
with as little stress as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, and it doesn't take them very long.
Mhm.
That is the beauty of this, and I think that's the rewarding part that Karyn and I
Yeah.
see, is it doesn't take both parties very long to realize that we are there to represent both of them,
Mm-hmm.
and that when we say we're a neutral third party, we really are a neutral third party,
Mhm.
and that we are going to get both of them there to the finish line together,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell them.
Go ahead and tell 'em. I knew where you're going.
The epitome of this is at Thanksgiving last year. We
Mhm.
had a really hard case. This
really
was a
hard.
really, really hard case.
Yeah.
And at Thanksgiving, the man who did not want us on this case
Yeah.
texted us and said, I just wanted you to know that I am so thankful
Oh.
for you guys getting us through, you know, this case. It just made it so much easier.
We were sitting here going, can you imagine how humbling is that they're going around the table? What are
I
you
know.
thankful for? I'm thankful
The
for the
Porter
Porter
Hawkins
Hawkins Group.
Group.
They were like,
I was like, now how humbling is that when you are being,
Yeah.
it just kind of came out of the blue, but it was great. It was great.
I do love those clients who
Yeah.
you think that they don't like you at all
Mhm.
because they're constantly yelling at you or they're
Mhm.
like very much like frustrating the process or not listening to your advice.
Yes.
oh, yeah.
And then once everything's done, they're like, you were the best.
I know. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Yeah. We've had a lot of clients that, you know, started out and then by the end, it's nice to know. We get a lot emails from attorneys saying, thank you so much. My client speaks very highly of you. That means the world to
Mhm.
us.
That's the
It
best
does.
thing. We've had people say, you know, do you want us to write a review? And we're like, no, just tell your attorney
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, you thought we did a good job. And I
That's-
said, that's the best thing you can,
Mhm.
that's the best review you can give is to your attorney.
And to that point, and I think you kind of touched on it earlier, is, you know, and you guys know this, but our listener may not, is I, as an attorney, have cited the CDRE credentialing process. I can't even say the word. The college, if you will.
Yeah.
And other attorneys in town will be like, that doesn't exist. Or I talk to my realtor friend and they're like, they have no idea what that is. And so another piece of this is the growing the awareness about CDREs and letting the community know, hey, and I'm not just talking here in Charlotte,
Right.
North Carolina. I'm
Right.
saying across the United States.
That's true.
Hey, these professionals, these experts do exist that
Right.
can help you if you don't want to move forward with selling the form of marital residence alone.
Right. No, you're exactly right. I mean, there's over 200 of us across the United States.
And it's interesting, like, you know, the real estate market where it's at right now it's been a struggle with higher interest rates. It used to be you could pick up a listing or a buyer and go find a house, and now it's making sure people are qualified for that. Yeah, and so having that, it's interesting to all the phone calls we're getting. We're getting like 4 to 6 a week. How did you get this credentials?
Yeah.
Like they want to know about it. And when we actually tell them, it's very few people that actually even look into it. They're like, wow, that's a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And honestly, it was an investment in our career. I mean, it really was. But, it was just something that interests both of us very much. I mean, like I said, I've been through a divorce. She had brothers that had gone through divorces. And it was just something that interested us. And we've been friends for over 20 years. We raised our kids together. We're in the same church together. And we just, this was just a really good opportunity for us to join forces. And it's worked out great. We
really like the fact that the Alumni Institute, we do have a code of ethics. I mean, like every occupation has a code of ethics. We have the National Association of Realtors. We have the Charlotte Board of, there's lots of them, but then we have another overlay. And one of the things we do or don't do is that we are neutral. We only represent the sell.
Right.
So if somebody wants us to help them buy, we have a lot of agents, good agents that we refer people out to, but we don't even want the appearance of us spending more time with someone to say, wait a minute, are you really looking out for my interest when you're also helping her or him buy a house? And so we just don't. And that's something else that agents are shocked at. They go, this is great. You've got to sell a buy and a buy. And we're like, well,
not exactly.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
We really
but
don't.
We have had referrals from other agents too that have stepped in and said, I don't want to represent my cousins anymore. This is nuts.
Yeah.
Because it's fine until it's not. And we see that all the time.
Yep.
And so we gladly will take those clients if that's the wish of everybody and work through that. But then they know we turn them back over to them.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't do that. Send the dog a
We're
birthday
not
card.
building a
We're just
relationship
not.
with them.
We have
And
a
we're
job
there
to do, and that's what we do.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I will say working in the divorce arena and becoming a divorce professional is not for the faint of heart at all.
True.
But on the flip side, I like to see professionals come together to serve that community because whether we like it or not, the statistics are kind of remaining stable that about 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Right.
And I want to really use that reality to create healthier chapters for everyone moving forward.
And it takes a team.
Yeah,
it
does.
really does. It isn't just about having just a family law attorney. I mean, yes, that is essential to have a good family law attorney. But I mean, one of the things that Karyn and I do for our community is we sponsor Second Saturday. And it's the second Saturday of every month. And it is, an organization that brings together presenters from the family law community, from financial planning, us, which, of course, does the real estate. And then we also usually have either a life coach or a therapist there. So it kind of embodies the whole thing. And that's one of the things that we tell them is, you may have walked in here with no knowledge and no team, but you are leaving with a team.
Yeah.
And as she said, what her phrase is, my phrase is, we've got a guy. Because if we don't know, there are so many little niches in divorce. And we have met so many wonderful people that do things in the divorce community that if it's not anything that we can handle or at Second Saturday can handle, then, we know a guy. We know somebody that can.
People are, out in California, there's a lot of collaborative that's been out there for a very long time.
Sure.
People don't really know about it here because we do have people, the largest growing community, as you know, of divorces are what they call the silvers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are people, the great divorce, the people that have been married more than 25 years and are now, the kids are gone and they're kind of staring at each other going, we don't really have anything in common anymore and I don't love you.
Who are you?
Who are you? And they're not
I don't want to be married to you anymore.
Yeah, right. And then they're kind of, I don't really want to pursue this with you. So, and they're kind of just amicable sometimes. They're like, okay, we're just done. But being able in that capacity to go, well, again, we know a guy or a girl, you know,
Yeah.
we know someone.
Yeah.
And here's some names of some collaborative, if that's because it's kind of a newer concept here.
Sure.
And so, you know, being able to be a resource too.
Yeah. That's crucial. I mean, from the legal perspective, I like to say I don't mind reading, say, buy-sell agreements and all the contracts. But at the end of the day, I'm not a realtor. I am a lawyer.
Right.
And it really is important not only to impart your knowledge and your expertise, but it's also really important to, especially to clients who have never been through a divorce or really seeking the answers to important, difficult questions,
Right.
to go to, say, you or myself, and that we know to say, hey, that is not my lane. Let me send you to the professional
Right.
that can address that question
That's
more
exactly right.
appropriately.
Yeah. And we say that all the time to the clients because, you know, because we do work with them very closely through this process from start to finish. They are not handed off to anybody else.
Yeah.
Karyn and I work on every transaction together and we walk them through from the initial intake with them till the closing table, and good job, it's done, you know. And but so they ask us a lot of questions, and a lot of it has to do with real property, which we do not get in the middle of. You know, like, I need him to come get this or whatever. Well, that's not really in our
property.
thing.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
as it starts getting, like, right now we have several closings coming up, so we're you know, trying to make sure that the proceed distribution is, you know, done
Clarified.
properly and everything.
Clarified. Yep.
Yeah, clarified. And, you know, during the middle of a conversation with them, they'll say, hey, I'm having somebody come in and clean the house, but I want him to pay for half of that. Can you make sure that he knows that, you know, and we're like, no.
That's a great question for your attorney.
That is our famous saying. That is such a great question. You need to talk to your attorney about that. So, yeah, so we know about staying in our lane, that's for sure.
You know, you were talking about like just being an expert and us staying in our lane and everybody staying in their lane and their specialty. We also can testify in court as a expert witness to the real estate transaction. So we can prepare CMAs. Like if you need, we get a lot of phone calls that say, okay, I've had this mediation dropped in my lap tomorrow or on Friday or next week. Can I get a CMA? We're not appraisers, but we know the difference between this street and that street. If you're in a different school district, it could be a complete, it can make the difference of $100,000 just by being across the road and in a different neighborhood. So we have a lot of attorneys reach out to us for those.
And the CMA, what is that?
Comparative market analysis.
Perfect.
Yes. Or a fair market value. Yeah.
And a lot of times, you know, one of the spouses may want to keep the home. And that's great. I mean, Karyn and I constantly, if you can keep the home and that's what you want to do,
keep the home.
Please do.
Yeah.
You know, please do. For that reason, a lot of times attorneys will reach out to us because they need to know a fair market value of the home so that they know how much how much it should be to buy the other person out.
Sure.
So we're utilized in a lot of different ways, not just necessarily just always selling the house.
And again, we all have resources that if they really want to keep the house, here's a name. You need to talk to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can keep the house, and not only if you can, but today, but can you keep it 5 years from now? Like, how long do you want to keep it?
Right. Is it in your best interest to even keep the house?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest issues, I feel like, you know, because there's so much emotion and they're all so raw and they're so floating at the top.
Yep.
And they just are not thinking clearly and they're being led by emotions rather than what's best for them.
Yeah.
Or they're led not only by emotions, but by what happened to their best friend in their divorce.
Oh,
or by their brother's divorce in New Jersey, right?
Right.
And it's like, but every situation is so
every
different.
One of them. Yes, every one of them. And every sale of the house is different. I mean, honestly, every sale of the house is different because there's so many different things that can go wrong, that do go wrong, that could go wrong.
Or even the way it's written.
Yes.
When we get the agreement.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
There's no, as you know, there's no blanket template to write all of it. So how was it written?
Yep.
What does it say? And you signed off on this.
Yep.
So what did you sign off on? Let's go recap.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, exactly. And that's another thing that, we read those.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things, like when we were doing this beforehand, we never once asked for a separation agreement. I didn't. Did you? Did you ever ask for a separation agreement and before you knew to do that?
I didn't ask for it, but the ones I was written in, they sent me.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well,
but no, at the time I didn't when I first started out. But
we didn't have the knowledge to do that. But of course, that's the first thing we do now.
Yeah.
Because we need to know what's in there because that totally directs that sale.
Yeah.
We may have deadlines we need to meet. We've got to know how these repairs need to be done.
Are there domestic violence orders?
Yeah.
And actually, that was going to bring good segue.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good segue because, as you know, maybe the listeners don't, but domestic violence is a huge area. Not only for me personally, because I was raised in a violent situation, but for the clients I serve, even more importantly, is domestic violence situations in family law are addressed very differently, at least from my perspective, in the representation and how I guide them through the process than, say, your relatively regular divorce.
Yeah, we see that too.
So how do you handle domestic violence situations specifically?
It kind of depends on how it's written.
Sure,
I hate to
sure.
say it that way because it just depends.
It just depends. Yeah, we're starting to
You sound like a lawyer.
We know your lingo, so it just depends.
It just depends. But, we take a look at that and what exactly does it say? Does it say you have to stay away from the person or from the home or sometimes they'll even say, they have to have access to the home. They're still personal property, and we don't deal with personal property and that kind of thing. But we also have safeguards when we actually put the home on the market about who has access to the house. There are protocols that we do. There are phone calls that we make, and to make sure that no one goes into that house without a representation, like an agent of their own.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, they can't have access to it.
Depending on, there's different levels, of the domestic violence. I mean, there's some where they are very frightened of the other person. And, they do not want open houses because it's almost impossible to have an open house because you don't know who's going to come walking in that door.
You can't verify
you
everyone
don't check.
walking in.
You don't check, IDs at the door. So they are like, no, no open houses, which that's fine.
So we do other types of marketing to cover for that. We might do a virtual open house so people can click on it and see the house. And sometimes we'll do a live that they can actually ask questions and we'll do it that way.
Right.
So.
And then also another layer of security that we do, and Karyn kind of mentioned it, was, once showing starts, we had one that we just closed on, and she wasn't frightened of him, but he was not supposed to be in the house. And she was very nervous that he would just call a realtor to say he wanted to see the house. And that gave him access to the house. And she didn't want him in there. So we reassured her. And what we did was every showing that came through, we called that realtor. And we made sure, is this someone you know? Is this someone you've been working with?
Yeah.
Make sure you get a copy of his ID.
Yeah.
And we gave them the name. Now, we got permission from her to do that. So because typically no one knows that it is a divorce deal, divorce situation until after we have after we have a contract and it's all signed.
Yeah.
So we got permission from her to make sure, but she was worried enough that she was like, yes, please do. So we called every showing that came in. Thankfully, it was priced right. It was in a good neighborhood and it didn't take a whole lot of showings to get it sold. But still, it was something that we did.
We also set the expectation. I mean, even the spouse who's not living in the house has a right to know what's going on.
Of course.
So we communicate well with them, but we lay out the expectation to both parties, like don't decline showings. We expect a certain percentage of showings to be accepted. And if you are declining, 70%, we're going to call you on it. And we're going to have another conversation because that's not what you signed.
Yeah.
That's not what you signed. And we can't get the house sold if we can't have people see it.
Yeah.
the flip side to that is the out spouse. We have the conversation with them.
The
that
person
there
that's
is-
not living in
the person's
home.
not living there and there's a
Mhm.
domestic violence order. You are not allowed to be there. And we do take precautions. If you have a question about the home, feel free to call us. We'll be happy to answer whatever. I think a lot of issues with out spouses and a lot of their frustration is because the agent doesn't know how to communicate in that
they
situation.
feel left out. They're
They
out
feel
of the
left
loop.
out, and we know how to communicate
Mhm.
appropriately and make sure they feel involved. And that is probably the biggest feedback we hear from
That's
out
exactly.
spouses.
You're exactly right because I think that's what wins most people over.
Mhm.
Because from our initial phone call with them, the initial intake, we go through and we do everything that we need to do. We ask the little questions to get the information. But a lot of times they don't really know who
Mhm.
Porter Hawkins Group is. The attorney may have recommended them and said, oh, they're great. They're a neutral third party. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after we go through and do the initial intake, we're always like, let us just explain a little bit about what we do
Mhm.
and how we go from here. And we kind of do the same thing, kind of what we did with you in the beginning as far as where we came from and all that kind of stuff. But we say to them, from this moment on, if you choose to speak to your spouse or whoever, please do. But if you don't, from this moment on, Karyn and I are the liaisons. You don't have to
Mhm.
discuss this house with the other one anymore.
Yeah. And no one-
Because we just want you to know that every conversation we have with you, either right beforehand or right afterhand, we are having this exact same conversation with the other person.
And the relief that
Yeah.
that we hear
They're
from
like, "Oh,
both
that's
or one,
perfect."
it's amazing.
Yeah,
you know?
it really is.
And
That's
we
the
don't,
same thing.
We're not giving that information. That's just, the
Mhm.
personality and the makeup and the dynamic of what's going
Mhm.
on because it's a situation where there's two opinions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's one side, the other, and the truth is usually somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And we don't really care what
We
the
don't
truth
care.
is.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
don't.
we're just there to
You don't
sell
need
the
to
house.
know.
We don't need to know all that. We're here to sell the house and to help you make the most money and
Right.
move on to the next step.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, obviously I'm a family law attorney that represents clients in various disputes, child custody to property distributions and spousal support issues. When is it the appropriate time? And I feel like I'm reading your minds and I can see it on your faces.
Yeah.
But when is the appropriate time to bring a CDRE into the process?
The minute we cross your mind.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, really, the minute
Yeah.
people start talking about the house or thinking about the
Yeah.
home,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
do you want to do with it? Because if they want to keep the home, great. We have
Yeah.
some wonderful lending people you just had somebody on earlier that actually knows what to do if you want to keep the house. And if you want to keep the house, Lori and I want you to keep the house.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
understand. We have homes and raise
Yeah.
our children in homes and, we want you to keep that. But if it's not possible, then we want you to have excellent representation.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can help attorneys if they have questions like, what's the best way to word this? They've decided on this. And now we are not attorneys, but there's a lot of verbiage that really helps us with the sale prospect
Right.
or process, especially if you've got two people who are adamantly opposed
Yeah.
and they can't come to an agreement because if there's something in there or not in the separation agreement or the order about taking our advice
Mhm.
or going to the expert real estate, then when it's at a complete impasse and we've done everything we know to do, and this has only happened once.
Yeah. One time.
Yeah.
We had to send it back to the attorneys and
Wow.
it took an additional 10, 12 weeks
Yeah.
to get just the price.
Yeah.
So,
And how much money they spent
and the waste
going
of
between
time.
the two attorneys.
Yeah.
That too. And how much did the interest rates rise?
Yeah.
Well,
by
for
it
the
did.
prospective
time-
buyers.
By the time they
time.
came back to us, the
Uh-huh.
price was not even relevant anymore.
Mhm.
They came back with the price, and we're like,
Too late.
"That's great,
That's
but we
right.
need to lower it because the
Wow.
market's changed again."
Yeah.
But it's really funny though because the first time this happened for the first time, we had someone call us, and he was very angry. He was a very angry man, and that we were renting in. He wanted to use his neighbor, who was a realtor, And he was, going through the process, and I was explaining to him, what we did. And, we don't ever try to sell ourselves to them.
Mhm.
I mean, if they don't want to use us, that's fine.
Yeah, don't
I
use
mean,
us. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that is perfectly fine. I mean, there's other realtors out there. Will they probably wind up coming back to us?
Probably. Usually.
But especially if it is a hard case, to get through. But he like demanded references, which is the
Which
first
we've never
time
had.
we have never had anyone do that. And we gave them, it just happened to be the man in this situation. And we gave him 2 other males that did not choose us. We had been written in.
Well, and we didn't know that at first.
Yeah.
We didn't know that until we called
Right.
the people. We said, hey, would you be okay if we gave your name and number and
Right.
to this situation? And if the answer is no, it's no. Like,
Yeah,
no one knows,
it's fine.
because we don't share any information with
Yeah.
anyone ever, even post.
Yeah.
So, but they were like, absolutely. I didn't want to use you either. We were like, oh,
We
okay.
were like, well, this is perfect. You're going to be able to.
Yeah.
But they were like, you were that good. I'll be
Yeah.
more than happy to talk to him because you got us through the process. And so
That's the goal.
yeah,
Get
that's the
through
goal.
That is the goal.
That is the goal.
They have
Get the
enough other
household.
things to worry about.
Oh,
We
yeah.
realize the home is the biggest asset typically,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
when you look at everything they're dealing with, custody, children usually, and usually there's a spouse that's having to go back to work for the first time,
Yeah,
full
so many
time, and
other
be the
issues.
breadwinner
Mhm.
for the first time in a decade.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things they need to worry about, and the house is not one of them.
Yeah.
We've got them.
Right.
Yeah.
And even when they don't want to look out for the best, because sometimes they just want to win the battle. They don't think about the war,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Mhm.
See
Yep.
that all the time.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
We got to look at the big picture, and that's what I'm here to do, is
Yeah.
protect
Right.
you.
Exactly.
What we're here to do.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I
Thank you
love
for having us.
fellow divorce professionals who are fighting the good battle,
Fighting
fighting the
the
good
good
war,
fight. That's
whatever
right.
you call it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Fighting the good fight. And your information and expertise is crucial to the people out there who may be thinking about separation and maybe thinking about divorce, and they have a house that they
Yeah.
have to deal with. So I truly appreciate you being here today, here at the Legal
Yeah.
Lounge,
Yeah.
and we hope to have you again soon.
Well,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot
It's
of
always
fun.
great to try and get the mission out, to know
Yeah.
that we're
Yes,
here.
exactly.
We're here to help. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our discussion. To learn more about me and the Modern Legal team, go to our website, modernlegalnc.com, or check out the links in our show notes to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also call us at 704-286-6302. If you have been intrigued by the conversation and would like us to continue our discussions, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. See you next time.